tuning in for us this afternoon on Padre's Ponderings. And you notice Rebecca has changed form, and she's not with us today. She's over on the other campus. We have a funeral service going on over there, and so instead I have Brother Andrew Nix is here with us today. He's one of the newest people on staff, and he's a Presbyterian minister by background, and he's a daddy with 3 daughters and a wonderful wife, and he has a big thing that he's on staff for us is he's a trained counselor and licensed and has been working in the counseling profession. He's a retired military chaplain, but he's starting a new Cross Christian Counseling Center for us, and we're just so pleased to have Andy here, and hopefully that'll be in full swing on the historic campus sometime in 2023.
Yes, sir. Sometime in 2023 is the goal, is that we have been able to transform the clergy house into a counseling center with a suite of counseling offices, and then the possibility of moving elements of the pastoral care committee out there with Elizabeth and her staff, and the new Padre, whenever that person comes, can move in that office out there.
No, there's only one.
That's right.
Only
that's
one Padre.
Then it's only one.
We have
Padre.
a bunch of pastors.
We have pastors.
Yeah, there's only one of them.
Moving that pastor out there to really build in that pastoral committee, that presence of care.
And you know that the clergy house used to be, that was where a lot of our church offices were at one time. So it's kind of going retrofit. Well, when Beck and I first came in '96, we lived there for a number of years. And then we had to change the offices because we grew. And then it went back to clergy house when we built over here and moved offices to Seven Oaks first and then to here. And so now it's going back into offices. And interestingly, when we came here, you didn't have all the parish hall stuff. That wasn't all done then. And so when you go up the front steps there's a door to the right. The pastor, the rector lived there at his church. His office was right there too.
Okay.
It was all in one place. So that's why you have that extra side door when you come up the steps, and another door to close that off from the house. But so we'll be going back into that, and the idea of taking the historic campus and moving it all into pastoral care with the priest there and some administrative people there, all of our pastoral care ministries centered there, operating out of there, meeting there, and then the counseling stuff too, so that it becomes a real focal point for outreach and inreach.
Yes.
Because the councilman this is not just about taking care of us, that's part of it, but there's a big them out there too that we're working with. How about demand for counseling? Now, you've just come out of working in full-time counseling in Savannah. Big demand? Yes.
In fact, there's a greater demand than they're going to be able to fill anytime in the near future. It's, for one thing, it's a lengthy process. It's a 1.5 to 2 year education process. Then it's a 2 to 3 year internship process to be fully licensed in the state of South Carolina. So, it's not an easy field to get into, in a sense that you're working with people in trauma, in crisis, in conflict. And that conflict can take months or even years to get through for that client. So you're waiting with them during that entire time period. It's a difficult field to work in long term. I think the most challenging part of it would be working with children, whether it is a behavioral issue or it's a traumatic issue, something in their background like that. So the need is great.
Now you come out of a secular counseling world, and what we're putting together is a Christian counseling center. How do you see the big differences in how that plays out in the actual counseling itself?
Well, I think
other than a name,
other than the name, I think the best way to think about it is when Christ, most of the best examples of Christ in his ministry is he went and sat with the people. He lived with them, he walked with them, he ate with them, and he didn't impose these massive edicts upon them. He sat with them and he loved them. And I think that the core of Christian counseling, the difference is that's our focus, is we're not trying to change who they are or what they believe. We are simply trying to be the hands and feet of Christ for them and with them as they walk through those different aspects of it. Will we be using secular techniques and secular modalities and theories? Of course we will, because clinically we know that they work. But our focus is going to be, we're going to continue praying for them, praying with them if they allow that. We're going to be praying together as a staff, as a team, as the hands and feet of Christ in every way we possibly can.
When people, unchurched people, let's say, or secular people,
Sure.
when they come to a place that is a Christian counseling center, would you think there'd be expectations that would be different than other places? There'd be expectations that there'd be prayer and stuff like that?
I would say yes and no, and it's largely dependent on what they believe Christian is. There's, as you know, Father, there's a huge amount of misconceptions about what Christianity is versus religion versus spiritualism, and we can get into every aspect of breaking those down, from crystals to meditation to any of those things. And I think that's what's going to really be defined as the relationship between the counselor and the client. Would I encourage my clinicians to pray with the clients? I would encourage them to be prepared to pray with the clients as necessary in person. Would we have something written down? No. I would want it for them to be fresh from their own hearts. And my vision is as part of the paperwork for Chuck Owens to come see me, one of the questions would be, tell me about your religious walk. Tell me about your faith, so that I have a better idea before you even get in the room as to what you're expecting. Would you encourage prayer? Would you want to pray with me? Those are some of the questions that I would ask at the very beginning of the kind of sessions as we go through things.
Now, do you see across schools, they got 700 children over there, a lot of families.
Yes.
It seems like that would be a ready-made pool of people. If even a small percentage of those people need counseling, that would be a really ready-made pool, not just to deal with them in a counseling context, but to deal with them in an evangelistic kind of context too, and where you build a relationship that gradually becomes a relationship with the Lord that manifests itself in some way that would not have taken place if they hadn't had counseling.
I think the key word in there, from my point of view, sir, is relationship, is offering another, I will say, mature person as an example for them. There are hundreds of students and family members over there, and I am talking with Elizabeth and Rebecca to try and figure out, when can I go talk with the teachers? When can we put together information flyers for the students to go out? And the reality is that we're just not at the point yet to where we can push that information out, because as you would probably agree, I think as soon as that goes out, all the hours that we have available are going to be filled up, and I want to be as methodical as we possibly can before we get to that point.
Right.
But I do believe that having one of the three of us rotate through the school on a weekly basis or a monthly basis in conjunction with
Now,
the
you
school
might explain
thinks.
who's the three of us.
Oh, it's three of us. So we have Lauren Weaver, who's the wife of one of our pastors here. She is finished her degree, and she's taken her national exam, and she's working on becoming fully licensed by the state. And we have Caitlin Fisher. She's about a couple of months behind Lauren. She's still waiting to take the national exam because the state of South Carolina hasn't given her permission to do so. But the goal, I would think, is that in 6 months, thereabouts, they should be licensed by the state to where they can be more comfortable working and seeing with people. So, and my vision again is that one of us, in a conjunction with the school and their permission, rotates through the campus and just becomes more visible as a resource for them and for the families.
That's the resource is the big word. Isn't
Yes,
it?
sir.
Now, when you say 6 months, so is that puts us in like March or April of next year?
Yes.
All right. So in between now and then, what are you doing?
Well, I am seeing clients now because I'm fully licensed in South Carolina. I'm able to see clients independently without a supervisor. So I am. I've got 4 last week that I saw. I've got 6 on the clients for this week already, and it's more word of mouth, people being brought to me by the pastors than anything else yet. And also partly that is I'm firming up my lines of communication with emails and phones and things like that, so that I can communicate on a secure basis with clients and their families and the parents. But once I get that, then we'll be able to push out that information, and it'll be getting the calendars full and then starting to fill up the hours from there.
Yeah. And in this, is there going to be a lot of work, physical work that has to be done at the clergy house to transform it into?
There is going to be some physical work. We're going to need some painting to be done and some walls to be kind of touched up from sheetrock and things like that. Lots of it is going to be more technical than anything else, with getting phone lines run through it, making sure those are active, and getting the Wi-Fi turned on, and making sure that the HVAC is done, the maintenance on it. And the biggest thing really is getting the furniture established and put in place. We're going to work with God's Goods and give them a list of the different resources we'd like to have when it comes to chairs and sofas and desks. Then of course we have to get the computers, and the software goes along with the computers for the security of the files. There's not a huge amount of physical resources that are needed. But we already have a tremendous carpentry team at the church that just finished the parish hall. So
yeah, the handyman ministry.
Handyman ministry does some good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you, in the way that we're organizing all this, we're looking at this as being a ministry of the Church of the Cross, but being a separate kind of corporate identity?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
What's the purpose of that?
The major purpose of that is so that we will be able to bill insurance companies for the counseling costs. Right now, in this part of the state, an hour of counseling from a licensed, fully vetted clinician is anywhere to from $100 to $125 per hour. Most insurance companies will lower that to a copay from $0 to $8 or $30. So by working underneath the 501c3 umbrella, we'll be able to bill the insurance companies, and instead of you having to pay $100 to see me or $50 to see me, you pay $8, and your insurance company.
Big difference.
Very big difference. Very big difference. And that is some things we're still looking at when it comes to sliding scales, when it comes to grants and scholarships, because we would like for the cost to be low. I do believe that there does need to be a cost so that the clients understand that it's expensive because it's worthwhile. I don't want it to be free, because the studies have shown us long term that free counseling, people don't care if they miss it or not. And they don't have the skin in the game to make the changes because I'm costing them money to come see me.
Got it. Now, y'all used to live where?
We used to live in Richmond Hill, which is just south of Savannah.
And you moved over here when?
We moved here in March.
Hard adjustment?
It's good to be home.
Good to be home.
It's good to be home.
Was home mean in South Carolina?
Home is South Carolina.
Yeah.
It's good to be home.
But you grew up in the mid-state. Low country is a little different than that.
Low country is a little different. It's a little bit slower and it's a little bit faster at the same time.
I like that. I think the pace does come across initially as being slower. Mm-hmm. But when you get beneath the surface, there's a lot happening.
There's a lot of stuff going on. But it's nice to come to work and to see inlets and marshes, and to drive 5 minutes and see the whooping cranes or the alligators in the ponds over here.
Yeah, they're there.
It's nice.
They're there. Yeah, it's a real special place to be. We've been here 26 years now, and we've loved all of it. But any place is about the people.
Yes.
And the people, I think, are very special. And I hope you've had a chance to meet some of those. I
have. Most of them have been the staff members, but the different worship services we've been able to attend, we've met some really kind people.
How about working with a staff, because it's a pretty good sized group of people here?
Well,
is that an unusual adjustment for you?
It is and it's not. I worked at a counseling group for about 15 months after I retired from the Army, and there was 5 members on staff, and then there was anywhere from 5 to 10 other clinicians in the building with us pretty much at all times.
What do you mean a clinician? What's the difference between a clinician and on staff?
Well, a clinician would be a therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a testing psychologist, a substance abuse specialist, and the admin are the wonderful people behind the scenes that do all the billing, that do all the records, that do all the appointment scheduling and things of that nature. The ones that check you in and then they go back to their desk and they do everything that makes everything possible for that stuff. So it's the size of the staff isn't hugely different. I think what's been most different so far is that I get to see so many of them on Sundays.
Which service do y'all prefer? Because I'm sure you visited all of them.
We visited all of them. We have not visited the 528 on Saturday. Well, we have visited all the Sunday services. And I think that my wife and daughter enjoy the most or most comfortable in the service, the historic service at the campus out at 10 o'clock service. If we coming from the Presbyterian Church, there's not rigid formality, but there's a structure. There's a structure to the layout in the service, and there's comfort in that, and there's comfort in my mind. There's a great deal of comfort in the prayers, particularly the responsive prayers back and forth between the reading and the pastor and the people, and to take part in those prayers, particularly as we're kneeling. I mean, we see countless episodes of people coming before God on their hands and their knees. It's a very comforting presence.
So in your former places of worship, people didn't kneel for prayers like that?
No.
But did they stand or just be seated, or I guess it varied from pastor to pastor?
It varied from pastor to pastor and church to church. Most of the time, just stayed seated.
Was there a confession of sin in the services?
Yes.
So that would be a part of your liturgy of
Yes.
that rota that you're working with.
Yes, and Lord's Prayer, Ten Commandments, Apostles' Creed.
So it wasn't a hard adjustment to worship.
No, it was not. The hardest adjustment for me was the congregation is fairly well prepared and trained, so they know standing and sitting and kneeling, and I'm still figuring out the differences sometimes.
Well, that's why when I'm reading the service, I'll say, let's stand for a prayer. Let's
Yes.
kneel, kind of give clues to the
Yes.
to the newbie around.
Thank
So-
you.
And you were helping me this past Sunday. How do you like that, helping during worship services?
I loved it. I love that opportunity to read God's Word, to pray with and for His people. I love that opportunity.
Praise God.
Every day.
Praise
Every
God.
day.
Now we got, with respect to the councilman, and there's the whole gamut of life
Yes.
that's here, and particularly in a congregation this size, it's all there. Like there's a funeral service going on now on the other campus, and I think you heard me mention that we're headed toward 40 to 50 funerals a year now, and that's so. I say that in that we've got a ministry, Healing After Loss, that ministers to people on the backside of losing somebody. We've got the care ministry, ministering to caregivers on the front side of losing somebody, and the Stephen ministry, walking with people. So I think all those could be reference points into a more formal kind of counseling, and they also could be resources out of that. So if we put all that together in one place, it ought to be there ought to be a real synergy there of opportunities to minister to people all across the board.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to that. Have you been to the food bank?
I have. I've been to the food bank. I've been to God's Goods. I'm speaking with the Stevens Ministries in the middle of November, and I've got a rough calendar invite with the Military Ministry Committee in a couple of weeks, and I'm speaking with the men's barbecue on the Friday night before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Getting around.
Getting around.
Praise God. Food bank, big ministry, and the numbers just keep on easing up. And we're blessed with so many people that support the ministry, either financially or by bringing food and things like that, and volunteering. That's huge.
Yes.
There and at God's Goods. A lot happening there. Have you been watching any of Jonathan's teachings, or you haven't had time for any of that?
I have not been watching any of Jonathan's teachings.
Bless you, son. We'll keep that between us.
Well,
I
okay.
wouldn't want Jonathan to know that.
Okay, well, let's just edit that part out then.
Yeah. No, he's got this coming Wednesday night,
Yes.
and you can watch it online, real time, or you go in the archives and look at that, and he's got the next one after that. So these will be the last two
Right.
for that.
And then
I'll-
you start teaching right after an Exodus.
I'll start teaching in November, right? And in November, we got the Irish people coming.
Yes, we do.
Looking forward to that, and you'll probably be included in an itinerary to talk to them about plans
Elizabeth
that
and
we have for
Rebecca have
them.
already told me that I'll be factored in somewhere for 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, they're coming from, most of them are Northern Ireland, the Church of Ireland. We've been over there many times. And Bishop Ken Clark and his wife Helen will be leading that team coming over here, 8 priests. And one of the things about it is to come and see a whole different way of doing things. Not so much to say what you're doing is wrong and you need to do it this way, as to say there are other ways to do some of the things, and it expands your imagination. Because if all you know is all you've seen, then you're
very limited.
You really are. So we've been blessed by bringing people over here and letting them get a different kind of look at what's going on, and meet some different people too.
Sure.
You have very few churches in Ireland that have more than one priest. Very few priests in Ireland have only one church. Gosh, I was over there 7, 8 years ago, and one of the priests he had 9 congregations, 9, and he was just running himself crazy. And they're little churches all through the countryside, Every one of them's got a cemetery right there, and really amazing to see the faithfulness of the folks. But they've got their church, and then 5, 6 miles up the road, there's another one, and that's somebody else's church.
Right.
And the idea of doing things, of consolidating churches and stuff, that's never going to happen. But very special, very, 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 very faithful people. Because in most of the churches that in the rural areas over there, there's no heat, there's no air conditioning, there's no restrooms on the grounds, nothing like that. People bring your own prayer book, or you don't have a prayer book. And it's just this, but there's this commitment to worship the way that our grandparents and great-grandparents and the other folks in the cemetery have worshipped. Really was over there the first time I was there. Was staying with Steve Clark was his name, and he and his wife and Becky and I stayed in their rectory, and a lady in the parish died, and went to a funeral, and it was packed, just packed. But what was interesting is I went to the before the service, the day before, at the funeral home, and it was just the different customs, and the family was seated around a wall, and in the middle she was the grandmama. In the middle was a little coffin. She was maybe 4.5 feet tall. It was a little coffin for her size. She was laid out. It was up on kind of cocked up at a 45-degree angle, and so you could see. And then you walked around the room, and you shook hands with them, but they never raised their head, and you didn't say anything. See, you walked around like that, and then you went out. And the funeral was the next day, and they had to put the casket. The pallbearers put the casket in the hearse, flowers up on top of it, and they went slowly to the church. Had the church service, and then the sons carried the mama's casket on their shoulders, walked out the church, and then we walked up the road. It was about a mile, and everybody was behind. I don't know where the cars went or anything. Walked up the road to the cemetery, and the sons lowered the casket down in the ground. The grandchildren threw flowers in there. They said a couple of prayers, and then everybody left. And then that night, the sons went back and closed the grave. The day before, the sons had dug the grave. Very, very personal.
Yes.
Very personal. I just was so touched by all that.
I would have a hard time doing that. You know,
But it would just,
I would have a hard time preparing the grave and then closing it like that. That would be.
it was very, very touching because I think because in this country, you know, the mortician does all that kind of stuff, you know, and but over there, it was family, family, and that closeness, and then this is the family church. I mean, this is, you know, it's this great sense of family identity. Really special, very touching. Great, bless me greatly, greatly. But, all right, so what do we need to talk to you about? Anything you want to bring up? Anything special?
You know, the creation of anything is special. But to be involved in this kind of an endeavor, knowing what the potential and the possibilities are, is incredibly special. I'm just very grateful for this opportunity that God prepared me all these years, and God prepared you and brought you here 26 years ago so that our paths would cross at this time, and you would give me this opportunity to do this. There's a lot of work left to be done, but the opportunities here to be a resource to children and families and couples and individuals, and as they struggle, as they grieve, is like nothing I can imagine. And
you know, you come with a clean slate, so a few years down the line, you look back, what's theirs? You.
Yeah.
And after the service last week on the historic campus, Gail Cake, one of our members that you gave communion to, came up to me and said, I think that young man went to the Citadel.
I did.
And I said, yes, he did. And I said, but how did you know that? She said, I saw his ring. And her husband graduated. He died a few years ago. He graduated in 1950 from the Citadel.
Wow.
And he said that was what, and he would tell me, he always wore Citadel ties. He would say, now that's when the Citadel was a real school. A real school. I think everything get watered down and all that kind of stuff, you know. Well, that's when it's a real school.
I think every class says that, you know, back when, you know, when it was real, when it was tough and difficult.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But you were 95, I think.
That's 95, yes.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here in 2022.
I am too.
And it will be a great year this year and on for years to come.
Yes, it will.
By God's grace. Glad to have you and Stacy and the girls with us.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Peace be with you.
Take care, my friends. Know that God loves you, and I love you too. And I got a hug for you when I see you. In the power of the Spirit, go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Amen.
You're supposed to say something.
Amen.
No. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
That's the end of the service. Presbyterian, you're still learning. That's okay.
I'm still learning.
Forgive him, Lord. Forgive him. Blessings to y'all.
Peace be with you.